you're going to share, you're right there sharing a mic with Jane.
Okay, we can share a mic. It's hot.
We have 4 mics. Okay, everybody's. Excuse me. We're getting set up because we're going to stream this portion, so if you give us a second. Leanne will introduce the panel, and she will act as moderator, and then we have this handy microphone here where you can ask questions. So just give us a couple minutes, and we'll tell you when we're ready to go.
Taking selfies.
Do it again, Terrence.
Well, thank you all for staying and also for that really inspiring film, which I think really shows a combination of how public policy works really closely with personal narratives, how important personal narratives are in this. And also I wanted to give a shout out to the local NAACP chapter, which I think are representative in the room. I think you canceled your monthly meeting, so thank you so much for being here. It really means a lot to us. Okay, so I'm Leanne Trapito-Sims. I'm the Daniel J. Logan Assistant Professor of Peace and Justice at Knox College and Chair. I've been working for the last 3 years very closely with the men who are incarcerated at Henry Hill, taking in our Knox students in an inside-out program. So obviously, really, some of the issues that I think were brought up is about seeing people's stories up personal and close. We go into the prison not as saviors, but to really work in concert as a community, and it really has been a very inspirational program. I will just go ahead and ask everyone to introduce you.
At Knox College. If you'd like to check out my podcast on the Illinois Coalition to End Permanent Punishments, it's Change Agents, the podcast. The episode title is called Ending Permanent Punishments, and if you do listen, you'll get to meet Marlon Chamberlain's adorable baby boy, Shakiri.
Shymir Love here. I am the FullyFree campaign manager for the Illinois Coalition to End Permanent Punishments.
Great. Paul Rothschild. I had a multi-decade career in business and corporate world before my personal habits led me down a dark path, and I ended up in federal prison for almost 10 years. I learned a lot in there, especially about like white male privilege. And it was ultimately a positive, transformative experience, really because of the people that I was incarcerated with, not because of any programs or anything that the system offered. When I was released a little over 4 years ago, I was pushed back into the corporate world by the United States Probation Office, who didn't want me to work in social justice because I would be around other people who were formerly incarcerated, and they saw that as a bad thing. White male privilege persists. Even with a criminal record, I was able to get a job in the corporate world again, and I had to accept two conditions. One was that I wouldn't talk about my background, and the other one was that I would accept about 50% of the pay that I was worth because they knew I was damaged goods on the job market and they could afford to pay me less. I spent my free time volunteering with FullyFree campaign and other organizations in Illinois when I could, and thankfully my relationship with the probation office improved, and last May I was able to join this group full time. And now I get to talk in front of rooms where my experience of incarceration is a credential for my subject matter expertise instead of something that I need to be ashamed of and I'm not allowed to talk about. And you can imagine, I'm sure, the difference in my self-esteem and my feelings of agency in how I feel now. Thank you.
How everybody doing today? Yep. My name is King Musa. I'm a hip-hop artivist. I'm community organizer for the Coalition to Decarcerate Illinois, director of education funds for Chicago Votes, also trauma outreach specialist for the Community Healing Resource Center in Rockford, Illinois. Lately, I'm introducing my work as primarily that healing is a crime prevention tactic that not too many people use. So.
Good evening. My name is Terrence Simpkins. I'm the Chicago organizer for Illinois Coalition to End Permanent Punishments. Myself, I have been impacted by the justice system, served 25 years. Upon coming home, I faced every barrier there was to the point to where I had to just break down. But, you know, God seen another path for me, introduced me to a fellowship in Live Free, Illinois, graduated the fellowship, and became an organizer. So, thank you.
I'll start with something I'd like the audience to know, and something that I learned in making this podcast. The law that forbid people with criminal records from serving as executors over estates have been on the books in Illinois since 1975, as are many of the 1,300 permanent punishment laws in Illinois. They kind of coincide with the rise of mass incarceration.
So maybe we could begin, and we talked a little bit about this today with our students, but maybe I can ask you all to share maybe a personal narrative of why you're here at this table. I mean, some of you have spoken a little bit about how you came to activism, how you came to work for public policy, but I think we shared some really personal narratives today that why are we all here? This is something that, you know, when I take in students to Knox and we study in our prison education class, I ask everybody, why are you here? Why do you want to do this work? Because we're not going to go into the prison as voyeurs, right? So it's really important to know about our own positionality. And even we speak a little bit about what incarcerates you, even those of us on the outside of these walls. I remember one woman in Canada, I went into a women's prison there, and she said to me very poignantly, just because you're on the outside of these walls doesn't mean that you are free, right? So we all struggle with a lot. Obviously, this is not literal incarceration. But I just would like to maybe hear about, you know, some generative, transformative moments of why you're here at this table doing this work. So if you would like to share.
Well, I was sentenced to 9 years in the state of Wisconsin. I too, like Paul, have been home now almost 4.5 years. And Leanne, it wasn't until I was physically behind bars that I realized I was already mentally incarcerated. And I became free in my mind long before I became physically free. But why I'm here in this, not just in this room, but doing this work, I did share with the students earlier. So when I came home almost 4.5 years ago, I came home with a passion and a desire to want to do more. Mainly in terms of like giving back to the society and helping women reintegrate back into society. Because I know firsthand the challenges that we face. But I really didn't know where to start. I didn't know where to begin, so I kind of just put it to the wayside, and I got a job as a beauty advisor at Ulta. Loved the job to death, especially my discount, but there still was there was still a fire inside that I just had to put out. I didn't know where to start, but then I got this inkling, well, maybe I'll go back to school and be a paralegal. I can work in a law firm surrounded around criminal justice, or I don't know, just something. And so I went back to school. I graduated. I am a paralegal grad student. I also am an Illinois state notary. So after I graduated, I put in applications for top law firms, went through all the way to the interview process. The interviews went well. The attorneys told me they went well. In fact, they went so well. However, they could not pursue me further because of my background. So since graduating, I have not been able to get employment in what I received my degree in. So I'm like, well, that failed. So I just can put that to the wayside and continue to work my one job until I'm just like, you know what, this one job isn't cutting it. I'm gonna get 2 jobs. I then got a job at Target Distribution Center in DeKalb, Illinois, and I worked at both jobs almost the 4 years that I've been home. But still, that wasn't enough. Yeah, I came home and got a job. Yes, I came home, went to college, graduated, but that wasn't enough for me. There was still something that I had to do. I just really didn't know how to do it and really didn't even know what that thing was. And then I started to journal. Well, journaling turned into 3 chapters. I was at a community event and I ran into a national author, Gracie Hill. And she's a woman of faith, and she told me after a week of us meeting, she said the Holy Spirit led her to reach out to me, and she wanted to help me with my book. Well, she gave me a discounted rate that I could not refuse. And so I'm like, this is my way of giving back. I can write my story to help somebody. But then I'm like, ooh, I need to take on a 3rd job to cover the cost of this book. So I started back in September of 23. I put in 25 applications to retain a 3rd job, right? All 25 applications told me no. But I didn't give up. I continued to put in more applications until I got a yes. I was in the interview room. The company told me they didn't care. I did share with them my background experience. They did not care. They were like, your qualifications are unmatched. We want you. In fact, we want you so bad that we want you to quit your other 2 jobs and we will compensate you and pay. And I'm like, what? Okay, cool. So they wanted me to start that week, but I told them I can't do that because I feel like I owe my other 2 jobs a proper exit because they've been faithful to me all this time. So during that 2 weeks, I had never quit a job before, so I was having the hardest time sending in a resignation letter. So then I'm like, you know what? I might just go on as PRN. That way I could keep all 3 jobs and just work the 3rd job as needed. And I'll just let them know during orientation. Well, 2 weeks later come December 12th, I'm in orientation, and I'm there for about 2.5 hours. We break for about 5 minutes, come back, and the instructor comes and he says, Ms. Love, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. And I'm looking around the room and I'm like, is there an emergency? Did something happen? And he says, "I'm sorry, but your background came back, and unfortunately, we're gonna have to withdraw the offer of employment." So I'm like, okay. I grab my belongings and I make it out the front door in record timing before the emotions just fell. I was so embarrassed because he said it in the room full of the other applicants. I felt rejection. I felt guilt, shame. I was upset with myself. I blamed myself for that very interaction. And forgive me, but I do get a little emotional. So I sat in my car and I cried. All of a sudden, felt compelled to record a video in my car. I cleaned my face up, put on some lip gloss, and I record a video not talking about that direct experience, but experiences that as being formerly incarcerated people face every single day, those barriers. And so that video ended up going viral, and it hit a couple platforms. One by which is Willette Benford. She is the senior advisor to MK Pritzker. She reached out to me and she requested a one-on-one. I had no idea what a one-on-one was at the time, but I did one with her that same week. And she told me, if we don't have a position for you, we're gonna create one. And not even a week later, I was offered a position as the coalition coordinator for the organization I now work for. 6 months into my role, I got a promotion as the campaign manager. And now I am in a position to be able to create new legislation that will remove the very barriers that I face with coming home. And that is why I'm here and I'm doing the work.
We split up tissues before we started.
Yeah.
We anticipated. Why am I here today? I think I'm here specifically because of the fact that I don't need to be, right? I have a privilege that most people returning from prison, and we're talking about more than 95% of the people that are incarcerated will come home. Okay, do not believe any other narratives, stories you hear. More than 95% of the people who are incarcerated come home. And most of them do not have the privilege to overcome the barriers through their whiteness or their maleness or their connections, their social capital of their families and the people that they know. A very small percentage do. And I believe that those that do are responsible to speak for those that don't. So I come here and I do this work because I represent hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, 2.4 million, whichever number we want to use. And those are all numbers that reflect the amount of people in the carceral system in this country. Most of those people do not have the privilege and they do not have a voice. They have lots of things they would tell you, but they don't get a platform and they don't get a microphone. So the fact that I can get this position and my voice can be heard makes it imperative, and I feel responsible to those people, and that's why I'm here, that's why I do this work.
Thank you, Paul. The reason why I do this work, I was an incarcerated child. At the age of 14, I was involved in a gun deal gone bad, where subsequently I was then charged as an adult and then end up sentenced to 25 years in prison. While I was incarcerated, of course, I bettered myself in every which way I could, physically, mentally, spiritually, because my thing was the experience itself was so traumatic that I never wanted it to happen to me again. So I wanted to put myself in a position that if ever I got a chance, I wasn't going back to prison. While I was incarcerated, I brought awareness to my situation using art. So at the beginning of this, I said that I was a hip hop artivist. So this came about as a a need, being in Menard Correctional Center without no outlet to express myself in a way that wouldn't be detrimental to myself or those around me. So I began to write. I started rapping, I started doing spoken word, this poetry, then I started drawing and fell in love with that. But these vehicles was first just therapeutic tools solely for me. But then I end up rapping for a neighbor, and then that neighbor told somebody else, and they like, oh, that kid nice. And so then I began to understand the relationship between me and words and somebody else. And I'm like, oh, I can move emotion with this tool. With art, I can do the same thing. And so I developed skills in these areas that then I start to mobilize on the inside and out using my words. So I would do forums like this, but through a phone. So my partner was in Miami, Florida at the time, and that's just where we started, where I don't know if y'all heard of Desmond Meades. He was doing stuff in Florida around voting and juvenile stuff, and so I was lending my story through spoken word, and then I would have like art at these same events like this, and I would just speak my story. So what happened was I created a change.org petition as well, and I started getting all of these signatures, and I seen the momentum coming by way of these arts. And I'm like, oh, people love art. So then I realized that if I led with my art, then people would be amazed by the art, and then they'll have their heart open, they have their mind open and subjected to what I had to say. And what I wanted to say was that a child should never be subjected to the standards of an adult because he's not an adult. At 14 years old, I couldn't go into the tobacco store and buy a cigarette. I couldn't go into the liquor store to buy liquor. I couldn't drive. I couldn't vote. All of these things. But somehow when I got in front of a judge, he could deem me to be an adult out of nowhere because he said that my actions were deemed to be adult-like. Doesn't make any sense. So I began to study about brain development and understood that the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for your ability to think long-term or the consequences of your actions, wasn't developed until you're 21 to 25. So a 14-year-old kid should never be looked at as an adult in no situation. So developing this, I began to try to put this in my art. I put this in my spoken word. So then like people's minds started to change magically, like it was amazing. And so in April 2020, Governor Pritzker was doing something about COVID where he was like, we're gonna create a process where individuals that were elderly or sick could, it was like a form that was through UP, y'all know who Uptown People Law Center is? So they had this form that individuals, family members can sign their family members up, like he's elderly, his name is such and such, whatever. I came across this. I had my friend reach out to Alan Mills. Alan Mills tells him like, there's gonna be a shot in the dark because he's not elderly or he's not sick. But he was like, I'm compelled to do something because of his story. And so literally 3 days after contacting Alan Mills, I was at home. This was April 2020, which is amazing. So since I've been home, the reason why I'm here is I realized that there isn't a lot of people that's directly impacted by the system leading the work. And so I found out quickly that there's this thing of like trauma porn happening though, where they get individuals like us and they say, hey, here's a $100 gift card, come and tell your story and relive this traumatic experience for the sake of our organization, who then at these events I found out, I'm not gonna name the organization, I did this, I got a $100 gift card. They made $97,000 that night. And I was like, I'd be damned. and so I started to challenge all of these orgs. One time we did this big coalition meeting, and I was just like, I challenge all orgs to start putting these guys in leader positions, because if they're leaning their story, this traumatic experience, they should be rewarded for it. Because y'all paying y'all salaries off of this money, and y'all giving this same money to individuals who never was directly impacted or actually directly impacted by this stuff. But yet they're paying their bills and their college tuition off of our pain. So anywho, that's why I signed up to do this work, so I can change that narrative, but then also continue to change legislators' minds to get some of these bills passed. So that's why I'm here.
Well, for myself, it's a little bit different. So I'm a little bit different. Well, I'm a South Side kid, city of Chicago, grew up on the South Side. So, I grew up within a 4-block radius. I thought this was my world. As a kid, you think everything that's going around you is your world. So everything you see around you, you adapt to. You recognize, you see, as a kid, you know more than what your parents know because you know what they're doing because you're a kid. So growing up, it was all right. It was okay. It was fun. But then, you had the hard times growing up from poverty, not knowing when you're going to eat, not knowing, when your mama, your parents coming home, when you in the house by yourself at night. So, you start doing what bad kids do. Coming out the house, hanging out with your friends, being influenced, stealing from stores. So, that led to a path for me of destruction, Stealing, getting high, doing drugs, in and out of, different correctional facilities, not really knowing the impact it was causing on not just myself, but my family and my communities. Because growing up, I wasn't a bad kid. I was a smart kid. I just made, some bad decisions because it wasn't too much that was really out there, for kids to do as you was growing up. So, I did the baseball and the field programs and the parks and all that there, but it's just, I wanted something more, but I didn't know what I want. But at the same time, I realized I was just an angry kid because I wasn't getting what I needed. So growing up with that, it just caused me to make mistakes after mistakes. So this last stint, this when the truth of sentencing came about. I didn't really know too much about it. So when the judge sentenced me to 25 years, in my mind, I'm thinking I'm just gonna do 12 and a half, and do my time and come home. But come to find out, no, it's 12 and a half. You finna do all 25 years. We're not finna rehabilitate you. We're not finna educate you because you got too much time and you just gonna be a waste of resource. So we're gonna just keep you in the cell for 23 years doing nothing. So I chose to, educate myself in different ways, even though they wasn't, it was just a hectic situation. But witnessing this and witnessing people coming in and out of prison after doing time, you'd be the first question, what happened? Can't find a job, I can't get housing, I can't get no type of mental health resource. So, those things takes a toll on anyone that's even done any type of time. Coming home thinking that everything is going to be okay. And now I'm not seeing this because I'm on the inside. So I'm not really seeing what's going on. I know I've been in and out, you know what I'm saying? But most of my choice was just because I just wasn't thinking clearly. But most people, when they come home after doing time, their minds are clear until it's cloudy again. So now they back doing drugs, they back drinking, they back hanging out on the corners, and they back in prison. So witnessing that and seeing that, the first thing I wanted to do was just kill the truth and sentencing law because it's like every time somebody came from being sentenced from truth to sentencing, it wasn't 2 years, it wasn't 3 years, it wasn't 5 years, it was 40 years of better. 40 years of what they considered to be a natural life sentence. How can you imagine putting a 16, a 17, 18, 20, 21-year-old in prison for 40 years? That means you're taking away all of his existence to send him out as an old man to start his life over. Where's the rehabilitation in that? Where's the thought in that? What type of system comes up with something like that? Because, it's supposed to be from 20 to life or whatever the case may be, but they don't give you the minimum. No, ain't no such thing as a minimum. They want to max you out because they don't want to see you on the streets no more. So seeing all of this and witnessing all of this and starting to understand that this is a program that was built. It wasn't an accident. You know what I'm saying? It just didn't happen. It was something that was meant to be and meant to happen, and it's still being and happening today. So with witnessing all this and seeing this, you know what I'm saying, it touched me emotionally and it made me realize that, at once upon a time, I was the problem, but now I'm going to be the solution. Because just because people do bad things don't make them bad people. And just because they've done bad things does not mean they have to continue to be punished for the rest of their life. And that's why I do this work.
At this point, should we open it up for questions?
Please.
Why don't we open it up? You can come up to the mic and talk.
Please. And if no one's ready, I can put Mayor Dr. Pete on the spot. I was gonna get him earlier. Can you
Hi,
talk?
Peter, by the way.
Peter. Sorry.
That's okay.
Mayor Doctor, though, I like that. I was going to ask you earlier to kind of talk about the timeline of this country, the period of slavery, the period of Jim Crow. We talked earlier about new Jim Crow and how these permanent punishment barriers are directly tied to that legacy.
Yes. Well, I didn't prep for this.
Yeah.
But it's an excellent question. It's one that we need to teach everyone on a regular basis. It's part of American history and needs to be taught from a young age. My course that I teach on environmental racism basically starts in 1865. So the horrors of slavery have been documented, and to the extent that we accept that as our history for what it is. But what followed after was not freedom in any sense of the word, right? And there was a very brief elected to Congress, and you may not know this, but the first one was Hiram Revels, and he actually went to Knox College for a year.
What?
And so if you get on the Senate website, you will see he was the first African American elected to the Senate from Mississippi, and he spent time in Galesburg. But that was a very short-lived. The pendulum swung. Those in the South did not want to see African Americans succeed and thrive, and they did everything in their power to ensure that they did not have power, and they did so through extreme, horrific means. They came up with all of these junk laws, but they could enforce them. There were laws that you could not, as an African American, black person, you could not walk without working papers, or you were a felon. You were be criminalized, and you could be sent to prison to be a worker for essentially no wages. So that's this in the beginning of institutionalized slavery within the penitentiary. And that started right after slavery. And that continues. We just heard today from one of you that as a person incarcerated, you are working for the state and you get almost no wages. I mean, 10 cents is no wages, especially when you mentioned a phone call is $20. So there is slavery going on right now, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
This is not.
Yes.
And we know about the Jim Crow, right? And those were the signs. We think of the signs, like you can drink at this fountain, you can't drink at that fountain, you can't go in that bus, you can. But what we know, we can say, well, that was wrong. We know better now. We can mix, we can talk, we can share, but it was much deeper than that, right? The number of lynchings that occurred, the so-called race riots that occurred in this state. Illinois currently is considered a blue state, but most of you are speaking from experiences in the state, the horrors that occurred in the state historically. Even some of the division in this county. We are Galesburg. We were a site for the Underground Railroad. There's documentation that this was a safe space for people to escape slavery, but the neighboring towns were not. And to this day, there are still a lot of tension there. I've lived here 27 years. And I'm not going to mention the community, but there's communities within 5 to 10 mile drive that when I first moved here, it was clear that if you were black, you were not to live there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't want to dominate the conversation. I appreciate the question, but I think I'm so thankful you are here with us tonight. The narratives are powerful, powerful things. And I do believe in the inherent humanness of all of us. And so having the opportunity to hear and listen and sit quietly and just to try to absorb the histories that you all shared, thank you for it was the best education I could have had, and I say that deep in my heart.
Thank you so much.
There's one question I would like to ask and then invite other people up. But, you know, we talked about this a little earlier, but what about this idea of resistance? So we came to talk about our panel as resisting permanent punishments. I'd like to know, because, you know, Terrence, you mentioned, no, it wasn't, well, both of you, but Musa, you mentioned this thing about like now doing the circuit and having to exhibit your trauma. I've seen that a lot. I've seen that at many panels, even like when I went to the Bard Prison Initiative. You know, we first see Max Kenner, who runs this really well-oiled machine, but then the people that have been inside come out second, right? So it's always maybe the white people that are leading it, right, that have doing the institutions. Even in my work, I think about this, right? And then bringing the people that have the lived experience second. It's like that a little bit with the Inside Out training, with Lori Pompa's work, right? So this idea of having to exhibit your trauma for a cost, I sometimes just think a lot about that, because even really, you know, well-known writers get to having to get up on the panel and tell their story over and over and over again. It can become about like a re-traumatization in a way, right? And exhibiting this pain that just spills out for an audience, you know, like even when you see Chamberlain, like maybe his audience wasn't white, but a lot of these TED Talks, you see people talking about their pain to an almost always white audience that never experiences this. I see this with my students. Most of the white students have not had direct experience with incarceration. Some do, but the black students do, or the students of color do. So there's always that disparity, right? So I just want to speak a little bit about ways we can resist, right? What are some of the ways, sorry, this is a very long-winded question, but what are some of the ways that you resisted from the inside? Because I know a lot of you did. I see that with men that I work with at Hill. And I think I talked to you about this, Musa, about one particular man who got in as a juvenile. This person is never going home. I don't know about like the context of that crime, but I know it was political, because he's now 50, he practices Ujjayi breath every day, he does his yoga, he walks with the most grace you could ever imagine, a fantastic poet, and mentors all the young men coming inside. Why is he never getting out? I know it's a political thing. So what can we do from the outside of these walls, and even in our community? How can we resist this, right? Because, you know, Hill is really in our neighborhood. It's 5 minutes away from our liberal arts college. What can we do more as people from the outside? And what did you do when you were inside that resisted that really toxic system that is designed to break you? So that's my question.
So I'll start on the inside first. So on the inside, we do everything from first just taking them personal like commitments to gain discipline, to gain an education, also to stand on principle. It's times where I done probably been involved with probably like 4, what do you call it? Sorry, where we don't eat, right? Okay, what's the word? No. So we won't eat. Yeah, out of protest, we refuse to eat. Hunger strike. Thank you. Thank you, mine. So it's things where we do hunger strikes. We tell people not to go to commissary, don't support, don't go to work. We didn't try to do that because, like he mentioned earlier, on the inside, nothing runs without the individuals that's incarcerated. Everything. If a light goes out, the person that's incarcerated fixes it. If the plumbing, a person that's incarcerated fixes it. The food, a person that's incarcerated fixes it. So we realize that we actually have power because we're the link that moves this chain. Like nothing happens without us. So when it comes to trying to get a point across, we realize the power we possess. But also they realize the power they possess, and they can just put us on lockdown, and then they They will make this food, but this food will be super bland. They'll give you the minimum that you don't starve. So they'll give you just a bunch of potatoes, maybe a quick little like 3-4 screen beans and a meat that's called mystery meat. So they'll do that 3-4 days straight to basically like say, hey, y'all don't wanna come work. We gonna keep making this food like this. And so yeah, we end up losing in that aspect, but those are ways in which we try to gain power from the position we have. Now, on the outside, and then also, while I was in Dixon Correctional Center, we created programming. So what I'm seeing is education, but we can create something. So what we start doing is just creating something amongst ourselves that hopefully we get some assistance from the governing body of the institution, the warden, the lieutenants, to allow us to do stuff like we did in Dixon, where we created a Dixon writing team. And what we did in this was give people an opportunity to come up with scripts and playwrights, where then after that, we will put on a play for the institution. So how I explained it earlier was like, for everybody who does math with a pencil and paper, like I do, you have the ability to write out your problem, follow a formula, and come up with a solution. This same thing was happening with our storytelling. So what we did through performing arts was tell our story, then we put on a play, the individuals come and they watch it, and they like, wait a minute, from the beginning of this play, it was an issue. It was a problem. He ended up incarcerated. Then while he's incarcerated, we introduce where he got his wisdom from. It might be a religious teacher. It might be an elder on the deck. And we show the things in which this individual then took on as a personality that instilled it in himself, and then he changed it. It was transformed justice, if you will. And so individuals watching this was like, wait, I don't gotta be the same person. I could come in jail and then better myself and then leave out a better person for the next person. So that leads me to tell y'all what y'all can do as a community. When y'all go and talk to these legislators or y'all representatives, you tell them that prison does not work for public safety. And if they try to combat you, you ask them, where does it work? Show me the numbers. Since '94 crime bill happened, they introduced that. Biden introduced it when he was like Biden and Clinton. They was like, oh yeah, we finna introduce this '94 crime bill. It just lock them up longer, and it's gonna help our community. It's not helped our community. 20 years later after that, Chicago had its bloodiest year. Rockford in 2020 had its bloodiest year. So that shows you in Illinois that tough on crime tactics never worked. So when they try to scare y'all with these fear-mongering based stuff, just tell them call BS. Call BS. And then what you do is say that, how about we try healing these individuals? How about we try fixing the condition that caused these individuals to commit these crimes? The low poverty rates. How about we go to those community, yeah, clap for that. Clap for that. Because we steady getting tricked. Like honestly, I won't vote. I'm gonna tell you, and I'm literally a board member of Chicago Votes. I will not vote. The reason I won't vote is because politics can't continue to run our minds and our lives. It does not work, and we find ourselves into it with each other, trying to argue these two red state, blue state BS, and then none of them work. None of the tactics y'all talking about will get us to the goal of harmony, of where my daughter can grow up in an environment that's going to be conducive to her growth, and none of the tactics that they're introducing will bring that. So tell them about healing. Tell them about community healing resource centers rather than prisons. Tell them about, hey, we should offer therapy services in prison. That money, that's $900 million. Have y'all heard about the $900 million plan to build these 2 new prisons? Oh yeah, that can go to therapy service for the individuals that's incarcerated now, so that when they come home, they will be put together mentally enough where they're going to love people and not hurt people. They're only hurting people because they're hurt. In our community, I'm not a bad person. He's not a bad person. The environment told me that I had nothing, so I reacted out of having nothing. I had nothing. I was a kid with nothing. My mom didn't have anything. My dad was incarcerated, so he couldn't show me how to be a man. So now I'm leaning on to other kids to show me how to be a man in my community. So yeah, so I just want y'all to challenge the leaders of our communities that the stuff that we've been told and taught does not work, and we need new action. So that's how we can work on that. Yeah.
And Musa, say more about transformative justice, because we talk a lot about restorative justice, but really what we need is transformative justice. Give a good definition of it, and how do we move towards transformative justice?
Transformative justice to me is at a base of accountability, right? And accountability isn't just saying, Your Honor, I did it. Accountability is being able to change direction and action, right? So after I do said action, whether it's relationship or parenting, transformative justice should happen there too, where it's like, okay, let's take accountability, and then what do we have to do next time we come to this road stop? We're gonna go this way now. And that's what we have to do with transformative justice. It's like, yeah, harm was done, we understand that. Let's go to the root cause of why the harm was done, and let's fix that so it don't happen again. So I can teach my children, you don't want to act like this because it said things. So that's what transformative justice is. It actually is real accountability. It's actually you and you taking accountability for your neighbor and holding each other accountable, but not to punish the individual. Everybody's so infatuated with punishment and retribution. Oh, you did this, I want to make sure your eye get took out because you took my eye out. Everybody gonna be blind after that fight, you know? It's more so about, okay, a harm was done. Let's figure out why the harm was done. So that's actually making a real change. I hope y'all can just see that visually. That makes a real change, and that's transforming that energy into something positive. Hope that answers your question.
I want to add one of the forms of resistance inside the prison system is just not buying into the dehumanization that is built into the prison system. Everything about the system is designed to make people who are incarcerated blame each other, hate each other, and think that the way to solve their problems is violence towards each other. And so the resistance from the inside is love. It is learning to love each other inside prison. I said earlier that like my transformative prison experience was not about the system, it was about the people I was incarcerated with. I was shown love, and I mean real love, the kind that isn't always nice, the kind that is honest when it needs to be, and tells you when you're wrong, and educates you so you can be better, right? That is the kind of culture that grows inside a prison in ideal circumstances. And the whole system, whenever they see that, they do their best to squash it. They change a rule, a policy, because people are getting along too well. They find ways to create barriers between people in prison, which is a microcosm reflection of what's going on outside prison. Right? Division and discord and false division when really none exists. Nothing separates us but shadows.
Exactly. And to add to that from the other side of the perspective, from someone, you know, okay, I was what they considered a gang leader, gang chief, gang member, you know, so to get some perspective and some history on that, when these so-called gangs first came about, we was considered organization, the first ones to be able to organize in their communities. You know what I'm saying? They didn't teach us how to kill, steal, or any of that. They taught us about community, how to love our communities, how to love the people that are in our communities, and how to keep our communities safe. But when they seen that that's what's happening in our communities, they started to destroy that image and put out a false narrative that we was doing all of this and all of that and all of this, which we wasn't. So then once you got the people to go against you, now they started locking people up. So now all the chiefs and all the organizations, we are all in prison, organizing, because now you're in prison being mistreated because of a false narrative. So still in prison, they teach you about values, community. They don't teach you how to kill, steal, and none of that. Even in prison, they teach you how to protect yourself, your mind, your body, your heart, your soul, and the people that are around you. To love everybody, not to hate. So all that false narrative, even inside the prisons, you know what I'm saying? All the disruptions, the false things, oh, he said this about you, he said that about you. To me, I call it as well. The same thing is going on right now, even with different organizations. And most people, I pray not in this room, I call it the Willie Lynch syndrome. You turn this person against this person against that person, and we're going to keep doing this forever and forever and forever, and it's still going on right now today. So it's time to stop having that mentality and thinking that way, because then once we get of our own way, because when we always thinking that way, we in our own way. We can no longer blame something that has been put into play from the past if we continue to do what they telling us that we supposed to continue to do. So now it falls on us. So we change the narrative, we fight back, and sometimes they don't like how we fight back, but we have to keep on fighting back in numerous ways on all fronts until it's done.
Let's go.
Just want to add about the external resistance. I talked about internal. Musa really hit on it. The greatest thing we can do in our communities is have a voice that speaks to our legislators. And we are on a mission right now over the next 3 years to meet all 177 state legislators across the state, all of them. So we've been down to Metropolis, Illinois. We met with Patrick Windhorst, one of the reddest Republican legislators in the state, and it was a great meeting. He told us up front that he absolutely will not support our legislation. And then he told us why. And he told us what arguments he would bring on the floor of the Senate when our legislation comes up. And then he told us how to rebut it. He told us what we would need to say to rebut his objection. By reaching out across the aisle, we are gathering the information we need and building relationships. And as much as he told us he's not going to vote for us, I think the meeting was so good that he might just stay out of the way. And a neutral instead of an opponent can be more powerful than a vote for legislation. If he just stays quiet, that's a win. So, bringing this really local, we are a chapter-based organization. We have chapters around the state. We do not have one in Galesburg. We would love to have a chapter out here. There are local organizations we'd love to partner with. Part of the mission of that chapter would be building deep relationships with local legislators and having in-district meetings. I think we got a question over there.
We can hear you, Mama. Get the stand up.
I have had way more experience with prisons than I ever wanted to in my life because I've had a son that was incarcerated. And one of the things that I did when talking to him is I noticed as he became more dehumanized, even his tone to me was inappropriate. And one of the things that I really worked on, because I spent a lot of time eating commissary, in that, because you get those 4 hours, so you spend it, trying to make their best day, getting everything you can out of the commissary, and, making sure they got money on the books so they can buy the sweet donut things and do the
Honey
little
buns.
barter system in prison. So, I really worked on making sure that he knew, when I talked to him, he sounded real hard, and it was because guys were standing behind him. So he didn't want to sound like my son. But I told him, I said, I'm your mom. You talk to me respectfully. So I used to challenge him to maintain his humanity. But what I find out, and I have a daughter that works at Henry Hill, and she works in mental health. So sometimes she shares stories with me because we're both social workers, and it breaks my heart. But what I find is the system is, like you said, set up to dehumanize you, break you down, kill your spirit, and they're unchecked. Those guards are unchecked. Are you doing anything for accountability? It's like most law enforcements, county, city, they're unchecked. They can do whatever, and there's no system to hold anybody accountable except maybe your local officials, how you vote and who you put in office, but there's no checks and balance and accountability for their behavior. And I have a neighbor who just became a prison guard, little white guy. And we've talked over the years. I've watched him grow up, and I said, don't lose your humanity just because you're a prison guard, So there's no, but I see him changing, and there's no accountability. Are you doing anything to create accountability in that system?
Oh, I can answer that. As far as accountability, it's really kind of hard to hold them accountable because they have what they call a grievance process. You write a grievance, and that goes through the counselor, and then the counselor either sign off on or don't. Then they got to go to another grievance counselor, and then you get something back maybe 30 days later, maybe 60 days later, maybe 90 days, maybe a year later. Then once you yes. That's part of their retaliation is the longer it takes for them to respond to you, meaning that the longer it may take for you, or the quicker it may take you to forget about it. You know, the longer it takes to respond, then now something else comes along, you done forgot about that, you know, which is a part of their plan. But so once you get all that back, then you got to rewrite another agreement, which goes to Springfield, who has the final say. So now it's not, and even in that, it's not a lot they can do. They can suspend them or put them in a different area, but they're unionized, you know, and the union is going to protect them. No matter what it is, they can spit in your face, and the union is going to protect them.
Yeah,
and what correction officer want to go, and what system finna go up against the union?
And let's be clear, the people that this system damages the most are women, right? Women who are incarcerated and are mistreated by staff egregiously have almost no recourse. And there is almost no chance of those staff being removed from their position. If we're really lucky, they may get moved to a different department, maybe to a different prison, but there is virtually no recourse for people that are incarcerated to protest against mistreatment.
And I did want to speak. I did want to speak to you in terms of your son. I think it's very important that the families of those who have loved ones incarcerated, they educate themselves before their loved one comes home, because our family tends to treat us as the same person we were before we went in, and we're nowhere near the same individual we were because of those experiences that we faced. And we can come off as aggressive, or you may misinterpret our frustration or our trauma as disrespect when it's really not disrespect at all. So I just wanted to touch on that. Yeah. Yeah. I get it. Same person, and especially someone who was impacted by the carceral system. We're not the same people we were when we went in. A lot of the times, most of us are worse off than before. So, thank you.
I want to address what you said first, because I remember when the organization started in Chicago. The greatest organization I know of was the Black Panthers, and they turned them into a gang, and they still have. They were doing nothing but great things for their own people. I watched this video today, and it was about what's called learned helplessness, and it starts in the school system, and then once it starts building on you, it's one of those things that you can't get off. You can't forget about it. You still stay in that bag. I read a thing about a lady that she used to have a house where kids came after school, and one of the kids murdered one of the other kids. And she said, he wasn't a bad kid. He just reverted back to some hurt that he had years and years ago, and he created and done a bad thing. And I think that's what you spoke on. Last night we was at a round table or for people getting elected. Please vote though, man. It's important, please vote. And all the people, one group of people, all they talked about was money for police to prevent crime. And you look at them and you say, I'm pretty sure these are intelligent people. And police don't prevent crime. They just come after the fact and send you to jail. And so, but they never talked about money to prevent people from doing dumb things and giving young people things to do so they don't commit crimes. I think we were talking about spending $9 million for work on our jail here, but they refused to spend $5 million for a community center to help kids not go to jail. Right. And those are the things and the passions that I have, because I was a naughty head kid, and only by God's grace, I did nothing where you're at, because I could have easily. I'm hoping that we will start something here in a chapter. The other thing I really want to ask you is, do you do things to talk to the young people so they don't go where you guys are going or fall into that? Because hip hop, to me right now, I remember when spoken word groups first came out, the Last Poets. That was my first spoken word, you know.
Nice.
And I just remember those guys.
Original rappers right there.
But now it's about things that aren't good for your life.
So
how do you guys help, the young people to see the light?
Yeah.
And that's my real question.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, me personally, I definitely use my art. I use my music. I go in, I talk to students. I go in and talk to kids at community centers. About to go and teach art in the juveniles in Chicago. And then just in my community, I primarily focus on the individuals at that point in their life, because they're great rappers. There's a rapper named Londrell. There's a rapper named Free Soul. These individuals rap about great empowerment, spiritual things, and talk about mindfulness. These individuals aren't being pushed by the mainstream labels. They only push individuals who are thirsty enough for money, because that's the only thing that they can hang over somebody's head who is conscious enough to say, man, what I'm doing is a danger to my community, but I was a have-not my whole life. It's the same thing on why I sell drugs, because I don't got nothing. This is morally wrong, but my bills got to get paid, so I do it anyway. As a rapper, I shouldn't talk about that, but I'm going to be a millionaire, and I can help my mom out, who's been struggling since I was 10. You know what I'm saying? And now I'm 30, and I'm in a position to help her. I'm probably going to help her, and I'm going to rap about whatever these old white men tell me to rap about. There's a video going around right now with the kid Young Thug. He's incarcerated fighting trial, but there was an executive, Leon, I can't remember this, Cohen. I can't think of it, executive of 300 Entertainment, and he was telling Young Thug was like, I don't want to put that music out, and he literally told him, like, nah, that works. What you trying to put out doesn't work. This is what we're going to continue to put out. And that's what they continue to put out, because you just signed your life over for this money, and you have to do what I say to do. But I'll take that challenge and continue to talk to the youth through my music and my spoken word. Because I think that's the goal, is to impact the youth now, so they don't fall victim to the same things we did. So thank you, though.
Like I say, when it comes to certain things, I defend most, especially when it comes to hip hop. I defend hip hop to the fullest, because even though they may be rapping about negative, they're rapping about what happened to them and in their life. They're telling you a story that's happened to them, what happened to them in their neighborhoods and in their communities. But if you continue to listen to certain artists as they get old and as the years come, those rhymes progress. They don't talk about that anymore. They talk about not being a part of it, doing things differently, generational wealth. Because a lot of them, they don't even go back to the neighborhoods, because they don't want to go back to those same problems. So they remove themselves so they can be able to see things from a different light and a different perspective. They're not all rappers, aren't all bad. They don't deliver, the message that they deliver may not be for you, but it is for somebody, because they understand, because they're living in them same situations, in them same neighborhoods, which is, again, understand who goes around and takes away every field houses in every park districts. Who does that? And then they go build another park, but it's something so small that it's just for kids, minors, but it's nothing else. No football programs, no baseball programs. There's no programs. So only thing left for them to do is what they're doing. because somebody came up with the conscious decision to take away all the schools and all the field houses. We ain't gonna give them nothing. We ain't gonna have them do nothing but live how they living.
And I can talk about a national project that we're a part of. It's the People's Coalition for Safety and Freedom, which is focused on the 94 Crime Bill. The 94 Crime Bill did a lot. One of the things that many are not aware that it did is it reallocated at the time $30 million in community investments and gave it instead to militarizing police forces, because that was the definition of community safety at the time. So the same money that would have been used to fund community centers and field houses and sports programs was instead used to provide Army surplus, like armored vehicles, vests, and tactical gear to the police. So the People's Coalition for Safety and Freedom is a national project that we're a part of from Illinois. And we went into the communities that have been most disproportionately impacted by the 94 Crime Bill, and we said, what does safety look like? Define safety in your community. We assembled all these answers and compiled them, and we created a framework for a bill to replace the 94 Crime Bill and to reinvest that original $30 million is now over $10 billion that is being spent on militarizing police forces and incentivizing them to provide the longest possible sentences for crimes. So we are not talking about defunding the police, but we are talking about reallocation of some of the funding that is being used to address the resources that the communities need in the first place to prevent people from entering the carceral system.
Hi, my name is Pam Davidson. I'm the president of the Galesburg NAACP. I'm also an elected official, and I was truly honored to see my partner, Maurice West. He's the State Central Committee man. I am the State Central Committee woman for the 17th Congressional District. Right. And when you said about Joe Biden and Clinton, when they made that law, Senator Dick Durbin expressed it best just lately that they made a mistake, but it was pushed by African Americans because of those communities that they wanted to change. So they were doing the things of the people in those communities. And me being born and raised here in Galesburg, a small rural area, and seeing the things that are happening and sitting on the county board where they are pushing for more money to go to the sheriff department, who went over his budget $2 million over his budget, and they want more money to go to him. What happens to the other areas that needs that money, and taxpayers are still dwindling down? So I'm here to say this. I think this is wonderful. I was totally touched by everything you said, every single last one of you. But the change does come from legislations. You have to vote, because if you don't vote, the people that get in because of lacks of votes have that vision that you might not have.
Let me be clear, too. When I said I wasn't voting, I was talking about the president. Because for sure, voting for my aldermen, people that I can hold accountable personally in my communities, mayors. I was talking about, sorry if I offend anybody, I was talking about the clown race that's going on right now between the presidents that I won't lend my vote for because everything that they're saying isn't directly any solution to what we need to be talking about.
But when you vote for the top of the ticket, you need to vote for the whole ticket, because it dwindles down. And when you're talking about monies and everything that comes and affects these areas, it's due to, I don't live in Chicago, but I understand when you don't have a job. Galesburg was affected by the loss of manufacturing businesses. Yeah. And it affected just not Galesburg, but throughout the other areas of small towns. Yeah. And when you don't have a job, crime rate happens because you want to feed your children. Yeah. And if you make a little money, you still are not qualified for the aid, but your child still hungers. So I'm saying this. It is a complex area that we need to come together as a people, but we can't come together without having a conversation like we're having today.
For sure.
So I want to say thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for being a part of this. And thank you for every single one of you out in the audience and all the ones that was earlier. Because we cannot make change without understanding where our root of our problem is.
Surely.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you so much.
I'm Pastor Antonio Franklin. I grew up in West Virginia, spent some time on a reservation in South Dakota, spent time in New Mexico, and the problem is the same all over the country. The people that are incarcerated in my state are predominantly black. When I moved to the reservation, they were predominantly Native American. When I went to New Mexico, they was probably Hispanic. Do they make up and who's in charge of you? Do the people in charge of you look like you? Most of the people in charge of you look like somebody else. And what the mayor had mentioned about the new plantations, the new form of slavery, when you read the book, The New Jim Crow, that book tells it like it is. I had a very hard time reading that book because it hurt. I lived through that. I'm a product of the 50s and the 60s and realized that, you know, like Brother Alderman Dwight White, I was able to avoid and escape some of that. I could have been part of the system. I was so close to being a part of that. But I was saved. I really, truly appreciate each one of you for your courage, your tenacity, for speaking out and stepping up, and being able to share with us the pain that you feel. I got a son that was just put in jail last week in South Dakota. I'm standing here today as a father, trying to keep my son from being locked up. An assault charge wanting to give him 30 years, they end up giving him 10. And I'm still trying to figure out, he didn't kill anybody. It was like somebody used to say they're giving them time like they're giving out lunch or something. Yep. But it's not the same crime, different time for different people. It depends on who you are. But I'm not here to talk about all that, but I just want to say, I want to thank you, but what can we do to make this not just a state issue? How can we make this a national issue to take this movement beyond Illinois? So as this coalition grows, I say, you know, there's some national efforts going on, but this problem is just not a problem in Illinois. No. This problem is a national problem.
And a global one.
And it's a global one at that. So I got young people that I know when they come out, I have friends that have come out of the system and they cannot make it. And what do? A lot of them turn around and say, well, I was better off back here. Yep. I got a job, I had food, I could do this, I had a place to stay. I can't even have that out here when I get out. So where's the rehabilitation? How much time is on rehab? If you put more money into preventive measures, being proactive on prevention, what is the root of the cause? How can we stop people going into the system? They don't want you to, the system's set up for you to go in. And once you go in, they're not ready for you to come out.
That's right.
They don't do anything to help you. Rehab programs of 6 months of this, that's not enough. You need some ongoing. Mental health issues, I know about that too. They give you a probation officer when you come out of jail, you know, keep you on probation for a little bit. But what about that person with mental illness? What if they had someone walking with that person to make sure they do getting the meds on the right time? That's not even talked about. They put you back on your own. So for all those years you've been administered something for all this time by somebody else. Now you got to do it by yourself. What sense does that make? It doesn't make any sense. But I really say, what is the next issue? I know you just got this one piece, this bill passed. What is the next bill that's on the table that you go push for so we can support you?
Yeah, it's a big one.
Well, the next bill, which we're trying to get pushed to, which is lame duck. We have Senator, what's her name?
Jihan Booth.
Jihan Gordon Booth. from
John
Peoria.
Gordon Booth, who's a
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
big supporter of this bill. It's a clean state initiative. It's a process that automatically set up for people that's eligible to have a arrest or conviction records sealed and or expunged. It'll be an automated system to where it'll be done automatically once you're done with your parole time, your probation, your fines, your registry, and when you qualify. So instead of having to go out and find a lawyer and pay for lawyer fees and wait an extra 10 years, you know what I'm saying? When you're eligible, it'll automatically get done. And that's the Clean State Initiative that we're trying to push, and hopefully we can get through it in January.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw some statistics.
How many states already have?
12.
12 states have it, including 2 red states.
Yep.
And they was the first ones to get it, you know what I'm saying, because they see that it works. And that was one of the things that the senator, where we went to go see, was telling us, you know what I'm saying, about the follow-up of it. How long since it's been this time, has there been any recidivism or, has it actually worked? And so, I don't know all those particulars for that, but, as far as I can tell, it's working and it's needed.
Yeah, and here's just some quick clean slate statistics for you for Illinois. Over 2.2 million people have criminal records that are eligible right now for expungement and sealing. Less than 10% of them have completed the process because of the complexity, the trauma, and the cost. We are talking about at least $4.7 billion in lost wages for the state based on underemployment or unemployment for criminal records. And pulling statistics from states who have passed Clean Slate, Michigan passed Clean Slate 3 years ago and has measured an average increase in income for people whose records are cleared of 25%. 25%. Who wouldn't want a 25% increase in your income and the taxes that you pay on that go to the state and fund community centers and parks and all of the other programs that need that funding? So the reason red states are passing Clean Slate is it's good for business, it's good for the economy, it's good for the tax base, and the reason we're pursuing it is life and death for 2.2 million people whose records would be cleared, and this would change their lives. And so this is a big piece of legislation, and as Terrence said, we're hoping it's going to come up for a vote during lame duck in the first 2 weeks of January. What will really help us would be in-district meetings out here with your representatives, with you and us going to meet your representatives in person. Shamir's got some business cards. I got some business cards. We're happy to. You got some with you, Terrence? Yeah, we're happy to communicate with people. Our director of policy, Greg Chambers, will kind of arrange those visits, and he's a master. He wrote his first piece of legislation while incarcerated at Kewanee. And that piece of legislation is going to pass next session probably, which will give full credit for programming to people for sentence reduction while they're incarcerated. It will reward people for pursuing positive behaviors while being incarcerated. Makes sense, right?
Except if you were sentenced under truth and sentence.
Except if you were sentenced under truth and sentencing, which is a federal. Yeah.
Because the truth and sentencing law is like a brick wall that nothing can penetrate. Even if somebody else is in there getting good time, you can't get good time. You can't earn nothing because of that one law.
And truth and sentencing laws were encouraged and were funded by the 94 crime bill. The federal government gives money to states for putting in truth and sentencing laws, and the repeal and replacement of the 94 crime bill would undo that.
Two quick things. One, I had the fortune to go to the Kewanee facility earlier this year. And this is the first time I'm saying this publicly, but I was so moved by that experience. I actually was I felt so much love in that facility that I don't feel out here. I felt so much determination in that facility that I don't feel out here. Those people that are incarcerated there, but they see the light. They have true light, and the things that they're creating classes, as you talk about, they are doing things in there that if we out here were doing those things, all the problems we have would be solved. And I swear, I love those men in that facility, and I can't wait till they get out, because they're going to make us a better place.
That's right. That's right.
Now, my question relates, and I really enjoyed the video and some of the comments. As you note, we are taught it's us versus them. In our own community, it's us versus them. It's those who want a community center versus those that don't want a community center. And they have the votes. Right now, they have the votes. So, although everybody says we need one, every one of them says, but they won't vote on it, and they won't move it forward as of right now. Mm-hmm. And yet, we all want to be safe. We all want to feel a part of something bigger. Is so powerful and so like deeply embedded in almost the blood cells of certain people, you can't get past that. So do you have any advice to that fact? I mean, to me, I truly believe if these individuals could sit down with young people who have been transformed by positive experiences they had with their community members, people different from them, we all win. It's a win-win. And there's no better investment that I can think of. So if you can give me some advice, and maybe advice to the community, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I'll try to address that. I mean, it's tough. There's no easy answer. I think that narrative and arts has a lot to do with it. It's a great way to break through people's logic walls. People do not make decisions with the part of their brain that we think they do. Right? They make their decisions with their emotions and with their gut, and then their mind fills in a story to explain why they made that decision. So art and narrative are really powerful. There's a movie out right now called Sing Sing, which is about a performing arts program in the California prison system. I believe the producers of that movie are offering it for free for community screenings. So y'all have a movie theater here in Galesburg?
Yes, it's in New York.
Sing Sing is in New York. Oh, I'm sorry, I said California. Thank you.
You can get it, I think, almost on Netflix now, right? I saw it.
Yeah, but they're also like a public screening would be a really, like, experiences like that, like this tonight. Hopefully, maybe future chapter meetings of like an End Permanent Punishments or FullyFree chapter in Galesburg, and then the faith community, right? So many faith organizations have prison ministries or criminal justice organizations. Those are great entryways to get this conversation going in a context where people are already thinking about like redemption and like the most positive version of themselves they typically present on Sunday. That's a great time to hit them. But there are no easy answers.
We should do a screening of Sing Sing. Brilliant. Yeah, maybe that will be our next thing. Okay.
Awesome.
Well, I'll take this time to plug Mud Theater Project.
Yeah.
That I had spoke about when I was in Dixon and we created this performing arts program. It was with all of the members of Mud Theater Program. We're the original founders of that program. And we finally just starting to get that program off the ground. So if y'all want us to come and do something here, let us know. Y'all don't got to go out of state to get the performing arts. We're here.
Awesome.
I just wanted to make a comment that, you know, with one of my exes was locked up at one time, and I called the jail and told them that I didn't want him to call me anymore, so they spoke with him and stuff like that. So sometimes we feel like something is not going up the chain, but you still have to speak out. Let's say something happened to one of your loved ones and they were incarcerated. If you call the warden, because if I tell them don't talk to me and they still want to call, and I block the number. I go straight to the warden, or I call the jail and say, listen, tell him don't call. So if they do something, that means somebody is listening. So therefore, let's say they had an issue in there, then we have to put pressure on either write the jail or call the jail and say something, write legislators, write, whatever state you're in. So a lot of times we can't just feel like, okay, well, they're not gonna listen. Write the letters and keep calling and do what you can.
Yeah.
And then, because you never know who could be the one reading the letter and say, listen, this lady said so and so and so and so, because some of the legislations took so many years, but it was years that somebody complained and people got together and saw that this person was complaining or this organization. So we can't, just because something didn't happen at that time, we still have to let our voice be known, because I had situations happen to me too, and I went straight to Tallahassee when I was in Florida, and I called the equal employment there, and I called everywhere. I wrote every letter, and they got back in touch with me, and they said they looked in what the company was doing, so I know that on a surface level and on a deeper level now they had to investigate, but I know that I complained and some things changed in it. And now that I complain, it's not like they can erase what I said. They can't throw away my paper and say, oh, she complained, whatever. It's there. So they have documentation that I complain and other workers complain. So what we set into motion can't be erased. So we have to remember that.
Yeah, that's great. Letters to administration are really powerful. One letter can sometimes have an impact. 10 letters, 50 letters can really have an impact. And that's where, like, the power you saw in our documentary, it starts about organizing, right? You shouldn't have to go on Facebook and beg your friends to write letters. If you are organized, you have a group already aligned around a common set of values and goals, then you can mobilize people to act together. And 10 letters or 50 letters to the warden at Henry Hill from the community saying that they want the water tested and they want clean water, like, that will have an impact well beyond 1,000 incarcerated people making that same complaint.
What are you doing, or as part of your goal to help reentry, to assist people?
Well, we are not a reentry organization. However, we have multiple coalition members who have reentry organizations. But one of the things that we are doing is we're convening expungement summits. And so we have these expungement summits. I'm getting ready to have one in Rockford on November 16th. I'm sorry.
I know about it because of Waters.
Oh, yeah, Letitia, yeah. So we're getting ready to have an expungement summit. It'll be the second one this year in Rockford. And we have volunteer attorneys that come in from Chicago. And
Do you target areas that have prisons in them, like Galesburg, to do expungements?
We typically target, so we have some good data. The Illinois Department of Corrections, against their best wishes, are forced to release some data. So we actually know the hot spots in Illinois where people who are justice impacted are disproportionately affected, where people are incarcerated and what communities they are from and returning to are not the same communities, right?
Yeah.
So most of the people at Henry Hill are not from Galesburg. Mm-hmm. Most of them are not being released to Galesburg. Mm-mm. So reentry services do tend to focus on communities where those people are from and returning to. We do as well in our organizing focus on those communities, But like Shamir said, our coalition is made up of a lot of what we call direct services providers. And we use the metaphor that we love direct service providers. We think of them as people pulling babies out of the river. And we think that that's a really important work. We support it. We help fundraise for those organizations. But we are working upriver. Okay. We are trying to stop the babies from being thrown in the river in the first place.
I hope that answered your question.
Hello, my name is Delcinia Tolliver, and I'm just curious, since you're trying to work on the areas that are highly, is it crime rate areas, or high areas where you feel like you're needed? Because we feel like you're needed here. How would we get it started here to help the children here to try to prevent this in the future? Because see, I know I've lived in Chicago before. So I know how bad it was, and that was how I moved out of there, because I had 2 sons, and I was like, I do not want my sons to be raised in Chicago anymore, because they couldn't even go to school safely without being approached by the police for no reason. You know, it was just all kind of stuff that was not fair, that I didn't want my boys to go through. And so for the children that are here now, how do we help them? I feel like when we had the Carver Center, which was our community center, that a lot of the kids felt like they had somewhere to go. Now I honestly can say that they don't really have somewhere to go because everything costs and not all families can afford it. So how do we get something started here? And I'm looking forward to trying to work and collaborate with some of you to try to get some ideas to get some stuff going here for us. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
So I think one of the things we could do is start a local chapter here in Galesburg. And we not only want to talk about legislation and change on a state level, but let's create change in our own communities. Let's start on a local level. Let's mobilize the people here in Galesburg to create the change that is necessary here in Galesburg. So let's work on bringing a chapter here in Galesburg.
Yeah, we will provide for that chapter training on organizing, policy, government affairs to work on local issues, and we will support you when needed and when it makes sense. We will bring a busload of people to help beef up the protests if needed. But that is the goal of a local chapter, is to both support our statewide campaigns, but also to identify and work on local issues. And we will help provide the tools and training for that.
Our main goal is definitely creating change at a state level, but when it comes to our partners and their communities, we want to support them in the change there, because that is too important to us.
Yeah.
I think we could end. I know you've had a very long day. I don't know. Do other people? Huh? What?
And we have to drive back.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And Jane's going to play a song.
Does anyone want to hear a King Musa song?
Yeah.
Not a super high-tech system here, but it'll work. This will work. This is called FullyFree.
This will probably work surprisingly well.
Hopefully. Maybe. Hold on, we're going to start it over.
And Musa's
Yeah. It's 3.3 million of us, man. That's power. That's power. Hey, till you fully free, just know you ain't free at all. They put X's on our back, shit, they been praying we fall. But together we all will rise and stand for that cause. And if we can't, then we crawling together, shackled and all. Yeah, that's all I know. That's all I know, that's all I know. Yeah, maybe we been taking the wrong pose. Gotta get out there and vote. Put somebody in that seat that think like, bro, just hold on. Just hold on. Cause I got a lot to say. Road to riches really like a block away. Yeah, the cops today. Only mission get you put up and locked away. Once they get you, then they got you for good. Hey, when you shine and come from the mud, dirty your name with felony records. I promise these laws won't stop us for good. Remember remember me, cause I ain't gon' stop till we fully free. Was on the yards, in the field, feeling like Cat when he took a knee. The way they react when they look at me, 14 threw a book at me, told me, hey, you release. When that's when they really put hooks in me. Yeah, that's when they really just made me remember. They counting me out for the century. They calling it criminal, look who defending you. Bet he don't match your identity. That's big valid, this validity. Illmatic, Mad City King, that's new class. Got blue pass, and my through change in the guillotine. Till we fully free, just know we ain't free at all. They threw X's on our back, shit, they been praying we fall. But together we all will rise and stand for that cause. And if we can't, then we crawling together, shackled and all. Yeah, that's all I know. That's all I know, that's all I know. Maybe we been taking the wrong pose. Gotta get out there and vote. Put somebody in that seat that think like, bro, just hold on. Keep in mind I said just hold on.
It's all of the information. All of the information we were talking about literally is in that verse. As I was listening to it, I'm like, damn, like everything we talked about today is in that one verse. So yeah, feel free to check that out. I got some business cards, I think, back there, if y'all interested. Yeah, thank y'all for having us.
Thank you, everyone.
It's not a question, but it just goes to show how free we really were or ever have been. General Order Number 3, the proclamation when we freed the people from Juneteenth. I'm going to read the last lines of it.
All right.
It says, the freemen are advised to remain quietly in their present home and work for wages. They are informed that they are not allowed to collect at the military posts, and they will not be supported in idleness either there or elsewhere. So if I got to go back to my slave master's house, because that's my home, how free was I then?
Yeah.